Morning, everyone. Thanks very much for inviting me here today. As Pete said, I'm from the council. I work within the carbon neutral team at the council, and I'm doing a double act here with Charmian this morning. So for a few minutes, I'm just going to talk about where emissions come from generally and talk about them specifically at a Cornwall level. And then Charmian's done some excellent work looking at emissions specifically to the Bude area, and we'll get into more detail on that. And some of this may well have been covered yesterday, so again, apologies, and please do move me on. But just as a starter, when we think about emissions, we often think about CO2 as the main cause for those emissions. And this might be testing what you learned yesterday, but can anybody tell me what are the other gases that contribute to emissions?
Nitrous oxide.
Thank you. Yeah, and there's one other, fluorinated gases. So yeah, fluorinated gases. And when we talk about fluorinated gases, they are really small but quite a potent gas that appear in things like refrigeration. Okay, so small but potent. At least they appear in some pharmaceuticals as well. So yeah, they're the four main gases that cause that greenhouse layer that no doubt you talked about yesterday in your sessions. And those gases are created naturally. There are natural activities that happen that create those gases. So as you can see there, volcanoes, volcanic eruptions, decomposition of nature and matter. Forest fires, they're all natural occurrences. Evaporation, these are all natural occurrences that create one or more of those gases. And then there is also human activity that are causing those gases as well. So the burning of fossil fuels, again, you may well have heard some of this yesterday. Agriculture, obviously the production of methane from animals, industrial processes, and transportation, again, another key activity that is reliant on fossil fuels. So, my slides fail me. I was going to quiz you again, but I did have some slide builders. They have not come up. So, bringing it down to a Cornwall level, the four biggest emission sources in Cornwall. So agriculture, 29%, nearly a third of emissions in Cornwall are caused from agriculture. Does that surprise anyone? Yeah. 22% from transport, 21% from heating and powering our buildings, and then 18% from industry. Now, I will just caveat that for 1 second. So this is the latest report that we've just produced looking at emissions in 2020. And obviously we all remember 2020 being the year COVID hit us and really disrupted all of our lives. So traditionally, transport emissions have been much higher than that and much closer to agricultural emissions. And what we might see in subsequent years is that transport emissions following COVID rise again. But what we should expect and what we should look out for is as we start to decarbonise those parts of transport and heating and powering our buildings, agriculture in Cornwall is going to be a much larger percentage because it's much harder to reduce emissions in agriculture when it's such an important part of our economy and our livelihoods, and providing food to us locally is such an important part of the whole debate. So it's something we should get used to seeing as one of the big features of emissions in Cornwall is from agriculture.
What's decarbonise mean, Nick?
Decarbonise, to remove those gases from activities. So whether it's CO2, methane, it's to take those gases that are causing those emissions out of the activities we do. So whether that's heating or powering our buildings, whether that's transport, whether that's farming, to decarbonise means you're removing those gases that are creating emissions out of those activities. There is some important information that sits behind this, but Charmian might well pick up on it on a local, on a more Bude-specific level. So those 4 big emission areas, what you didn't see in there were other areas. Waste is another big emission source area for Cornwall, as it is nationally and internationally. And aligned to waste is beyond those big emission sources, emissions that we directly produce in everyday activities, is all the stuff we consume. So all of those things that we buy, food, going on holiday, clothes to wear, they all create emissions as well in the manufacturing of them, in the transportation of those items to where you live or where you buy them from. They are all, and that in itself leaves a significant carbon footprint. So I just want to, before I hand over to Charmian, just leave you with this. So those 4 big emission sources, they're emissions that we directly produce, okay? And when you add up all of Cornwall's emissions per person, they work out about 6 tonnes of carbon equivalent per person. National average is about 5.2. So Cornwall is per person, above the national average. Not surprising when you think about we're predominantly a rural community and you think about transport, etc., but 6 tonnes per person. When you add in all of the, red card, 2 red cards. Yes. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, 6 tonnes per year. When you add in all of the stuff that we buy and things that we do, it goes up to about 13 tonnes per person. So I just wanted to, the difference between consumption and what we consume on a day-to-day basis is a huge factor in our overall, where emissions come from, and our overall carbon footprint. Okay? How am I for time? Have I run out of time?
You have, but tell us about the graph.
Okay, so just very quickly, this graph is showing our emissions going back to 2008, when the council first started recording emissions for Cornwall, and how they've reduced. So since 2008, they've reduced by 23%. But importantly, since 2019, when the climate emergency was declared, reduced by 7%. Okay? The big question is that enough? And quite simply, it is not enough. So you can see there, to get to carbon neutral by 2030, which is the date by which a lot of the scientific community say we should be heading for, to stop that 1.5% increase that you probably heard about yesterday, the black line is our current trajectory of where we are heading to. UK government carbon neutral target of 2050. If we follow our current rate of reduction, you can see here we are currently heading for carbon neutral at around about between 2055 and 2060. So, yeah, a lot to do, and a lot for us all to think about in terms of the action that we need to take.